Captain Elliot Reed's fingers raced across the control panel, trying desperately to stabilize his ship as it hurtled toward the surface of an uncharted planet. The ship had been knocked off course by an asteroid field, and no matter how hard he tried, the damage was too severe. Smoke filled the cockpit, alarms blared in his ears, and the once orderly displays now flickered with chaotic red warnings. "This is it," he muttered to himself, gripping the controls tightly. The ground was rapidly approaching, and he had only one option left: to attempt a crash landing and pray the planet's atmosphere could support life. The ship hit the ground with a deafening crash, the impact tossing Elliot violently against his seat restraints. Metals screeched and groaned as the hull skidded across the alien terrain before finally coming to a halt, half buried in the dirt and surrounded by the tall, swaying trees of a dense forest. Everything went still, save for the faint hiss of cooling metal. Dazed but alive, Elliot groaned and released the restraints, stumbling out of the cockpit and into the open air. The world around him was unlike anything he had ever seen. The trees were enormous, their trunks shimmering faintly as though lit from within. Strange, bioluminescent plants dotted the forest floor, casting an ethereal glow. His head swam from the impact, but the oxygen levels seemed adequate. That was a small comfort. Breathing deeply, he surveyed the wreckage of his ship. There would be no salvaging it. His heart sank as the realization hit him. He was stranded on an unknown planet, alone. But as he moved through the trees, Elliot had the unsettling feeling he wasn't alone. Something or someone was watching him. Days passed, and Elliot began to explore the surrounding forest, looking for food and fresh water. The planet, though alien, was lush with life. Strange fruits hung from trees, and streams of clear, sparkling water cut through the dense woods. His survival instincts kicked in, but the eerie feeling of being watched never left him. One morning, while following the stream to a larger body of water, Elliot caught movement out of the corner of his eye. He froze, heart racing, and slowly turned toward the source. Among the trees stood two figures, barely visible through the shimmering foliage. They were tall, their forms slender and graceful, with skin that gleamed in the faint light like polished marble. Their pointed ears and angular features immediately set them apart from anything Elliot had ever seen. His breath caught in his throat as their eyes met his, one pair a piercing silver, the other a deep, oceanic blue. Elliot raised his hand slowly, showing that he was unarmed. "I don't mean any harm," he called out, his voice echoing through the silent forest. The two figures stepped closer, their movements almost unnaturally smooth. As they emerged fully from the shadows, Elliot saw that they resembled beings from Earth's ancient myths, elves. They wore garments made of what appeared to be woven vines and flowers, their hair cascading down their backs in waves of silver and gold. Despite their beauty, their expressions were cautious, their eyes sharp with suspicion. The one with silver eyes spoke first. Her voice melodic but firm. "You are not of this world." "No, I'm not," Elliot replied, choosing his words carefully. "I crashed here. I didn't mean to intrude." The second woman, her blue eyes studying him intently, took a step forward. "Few outsiders survive the fall. How is it you live?" Elliot hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "I got lucky, I guess." The silver-eyed woman exchanged a glance with her companion. "Luck alone does not explain your presence here." Elliot nodded, feeling the weight of their gaze. "I don't know what brought me here. My ship was damaged, and I'm stranded. If I could leave, I would." For a moment, they stood in silence, the tension thick in the air. Then, the silver-eyed one's expression softened slightly. "I am Lyria, and this is my sister, Thalia. We will help you, but know this, our world is not as peaceful as it may seem." Elliot exhaled, his relief tempered by her warning. "Thank you. I could use the help." Lyria nodded, but her eyes remained watchful. "Follow us, but tread carefully. You are the first human to set foot here, and not all will welcome you." As Elliot followed the two sisters deeper into the forest, he couldn't shake the feeling that his journey was just beginning, and that this world held secrets far beyond anything he could have imagined. Over the following days, Elliot moved deeper into the alien world alongside Lyria and Thalia. The sisters were cautious, keeping a careful distance from him, their curiosity tempered by wariness. They led him through a forest that seemed almost alive, the trees shimmering with strange light, their leaves whispering secrets that only the wind could carry. The air was thick with an ancient magic, a force Elliot couldn't understand, but could feel in the pit of his stomach. Elliot tried to learn as much as he could from the sisters, but their answers were often guarded. Lyria, the elder, was clearly the leader between them. Her silver eyes missed nothing, and her tone carried an authority that Elliot respected, though it kept him at a distance. Thalia, the younger, was more curious. She would ask him about Earth, about his life as a human, and about the stars he had come from. One evening, as they gathered around a campfire, Thalia asked, "Why did you leave your world, Elliot? What brought you to the stars?" Elliot paused, poking the fire with a stick as he gathered his thoughts. "I left Earth because it felt like there was always something more out there. Space is vast and it's full of mysteries. I wanted to explore it, to see things no one else had seen before." Thalia's blue eyes gleamed with interest. "And now that you've seen us, what do you think?" Elliot smiled softly, though there was a weight to his words. "I didn't expect this. Your world, it's beautiful, mysterious, but I can't lie, I miss home. I miss knowing where I fit in." Lyria, who had been silently listening, finally spoke, her voice low but clear. "You are in a place where few things fit, Elliot. Our world is on the edge of something great and dangerous. You came here not just by accident, but because this planet sensed you." She fixed him with a piercing gaze. "But you are still an outsider. We do not yet know if you can be trusted." Elliot met her gaze, his heart pounding. "I've only ever wanted to survive. I don't want to harm you or this world, but I need your help if I'm going to make it here." Lyria studied him for a long moment before finally nodding. "Time will tell if your words are true, human." That night, Elliot lay beneath the unfamiliar stars, wondering if he would ever gain the full trust of the two sisters. Their world was filled with dangers he couldn't yet understand, but his survival depended on proving that he could be more than just an intruder. Weeks passed, and slowly, Elliot's presence became less of a threat and more of a partnership. Lyria and Thalia began to share more of their world's history and the burden they carried as the last of their people. Their ancestors had once ruled this planet, but over time their civilization had crumbled, leaving only ruins and memories behind. The sisters were now the keepers of that legacy, protectors of the forest and its ancient power. One evening, as the three of them sat by the fire, Lyria began to speak of their past. Her voice was softer than usual, almost mournful. "Our people once lived in great cities that shimmered like the stars," she said, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "We were connected to the land, to the magic that runs through it. But as the centuries passed, we lost our way. We became isolated, distrustful of outsiders. When the invaders came, we were too weak to defend ourselves." Thalia added quietly, "Now it's just us, the last of the guardians." Elliot listened intently, his heart heavy. He had always sought the mysteries of space, but he hadn't expected to stumble upon a dying world, or the burden that Lyria and Thalia carried. He realized that his arrival might be more significant than he first thought. They were alone, just as he was. In some ways, they were all lost in a universe that didn't seem to care. "You're not alone anymore," Elliot said after a long pause, his voice gentle but firm. "You don't have to carry this burden by yourselves." Lyria's gaze snapped to his, her silver eyes intense. "And what would you know of burdens, Elliot Reed? You who fell from the stars and landed in a place you do not belong." Elliot held her gaze, unflinching. "I know what it feels like to be lost, to not know where you belong. I came here by accident, but maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe I'm here to help." Thalia's eyes softened and she smiled slightly, the tension in the air easing. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "perhaps the stars did bring you here for a reason." From that night on, the dynamic between Elliot and the sisters shifted. They began to teach him more about the world's ancient magic, allowing him to participate in their rituals. In return, Elliot shared what he could of human ingenuity, showing them how to use the few remaining pieces of technology from his ship to repair parts of their home. The shared experiences and the quiet moments by the fire deepened their connection. The trust that had once seemed impossible began to grow. Elliot could feel the bond between him, Lyria, and Thalia strengthening with each passing day. He was no longer an outsider in their eyes, but something more. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Elliot found that he didn't long for Earth as much as he had in the beginning. He had found something here. Something unexpected, yet undeniable. He had found a home. And in Lyria and Thalia, he had found something even more precious, a sense of belonging that he hadn't felt in years. As the seasons changed on the alien planet, the bond between Elliot, Lyria, and Thalia grew stronger. What had begun as cautious cooperation had blossomed into something far deeper, a connection none of them had anticipated. The shared trials, laughter, and trust had brought them closer in ways that transcended mere friendship. But there was an unspoken question that hung between them, a question that Elliot dared not ask, though it weighed on his mind every day. One evening, while sitting around the fire in their now familiar clearing, Lyria broke the silence. "Our people have a tradition," she began, her voice soft but carrying a weight that made Elliot pay attention. "When two or more souls are bound together by fate, by trust, and by love, we hold a ceremony of ties." Thalia's gaze flicked between Lyria and Elliot, her usual playful expression replaced by something more serious. "It's a union that binds us not just in this life, but in all the lives that follow," she added. "It's a way to become family, to share one another's burdens and joys." Elliot's heart raced, though he tried to keep his expression steady. "You mean, like marriage?" Lyria nodded slowly, her silver eyes locking onto his. "Yes, but it is deeper than a contract. It is a vow, one that cannot be undone." Thalia leaned forward, her voice gentler. "We've come to care for you, Elliot. You are no longer just a stranger from the stars. You've become part of our world, part of us, and we would like you to join us fully in the ceremony of ties." Elliot felt his breath catch in his throat. His mind raced. Was this real? Could he truly be a part of their world in such a profound way? He had never imagined finding love in the far reaches of space, and certainly not in a bond as unusual and unexpected as this. But as he looked into Lyria's steady gaze and Thalia's hopeful eyes, he realized something. He loved them, both of them, and the idea of binding his fate to theirs felt right in a way nothing else had. Elliot hesitated, his words catching. He took a deep breath, steadying himself before continuing. "I never thought this would happen, but I can't imagine being anywhere else. I can't imagine being without you." Thalia smiled, her face lighting up with joy, while Lyria's expression softened into something warmer. Elliot could feel the weight of his decision, but it was not a burden. It was a promise. One he was ready to make. "When do we do this ceremony?" Elliot asked, his heart now steady, filled with resolve. Lyria exchanged a glance with Thalia, then turned back to Elliot. "Tomorrow, at sunset, we will bind our lives together, as is the way of our people." That night, Elliot lay under the stars, reflecting on how far he had come since the crash. The loneliness he had felt when first stranded on this alien world had been replaced by something far more beautiful than he could have ever imagined. He had found love, unexpected, unconventional, but true. The following day passed in a blur. Elliot, Lyria, and Thalia prepared for the ceremony in silence, each of them focused on what was to come. Lyria and Thalia had adorned themselves in flowing robes made from the finest materials the planet's forests could offer, garments that shimmered like stardust, ethereal and light. Elliot, too, had been given a ceremonial robe. Though simpler in design, it bore symbols that matched those worn by his future wives. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting the forest in shades of gold and crimson, the three of them made their way to a sacred clearing. This place was unlike any Elliot had seen before, an ancient circle of towering trees that glowed softly with their own inner light. In the center of the clearing, a pool of water shimmered, reflecting the vibrant colors of the sky. Lyria stepped forward first, her voice low and melodic as she spoke the ancient words of her people. "We stand here, under the watchful eyes of our ancestors, to bind our souls together, in this life and in all lives to come." Thalia followed, her voice filled with emotion. "We do not bind out of duty, but out of love. We choose to walk this path together, knowing that it will not always be easy, but that it will always be ours." Elliot's chest swelled with emotion as he listened to their words. Then it was his turn. He had never been one for grand speeches, but in this moment, words seemed to flow effortlessly. "I came here by accident, lost and alone," Elliot began, his voice steady, But I found something I never expected. I found love. I found home. And now I choose to stay. Not because I'm stranded, but because I want to be here, with you. You've shown me a world I never knew existed, and I want to spend the rest of my life discovering it with you. The wind stirred gently, as if the planet itself was listening to their vows. Lyria and Thalia exchanged a glance before stepping forward to take Elliot's hands. Together, they stood in a circle, their hands clasped, their eyes reflecting the soft glow of the forest. As the final rays of sunlight disappeared, Lyria raised her voice in a soft chant, and Thalia joined her. The air around them seemed to hum with energy, the trees swaying as though in rhythm with the ancient melody. Elliot could feel the warmth of their hands, the weight of the vows they had just spoken settling into his very soul. And then it was done. The ceremony of ties had bound them together in a way that Elliot couldn't fully explain, but he felt it, deep inside, as if the planet itself had witnessed and blessed their union. It was a connection unlike anything he had ever known. When the chant ended, the world seemed to exhale, the forest falling back into its quiet, serene state. The three of them stood in the clearing, the stars now twinkling brightly overhead. Elliot looked at Lyria and Thalia, his heart full. They were no longer just companions, no longer just allies. They were his family now. That night, they lay together under the stars, their bond sealed. For the first time in a long time, Elliot didn't think about Earth, or his old life, or the possibilities of rescue. He thought only of the future, a future that now stretched out before him, filled with hope, love, and the unknown wonders of this new world. He had come here as a stranger, but now he belonged. The days after the ceremony of ties were filled with peace and happiness, but beneath the calm surface of their new life, a darker current stirred. The bond Elliot, Lyria, and Thalia shared was unshakable, but the ancient forces of the planet had awakened, and not all of them were friendly. One afternoon, as Elliot and Thalia were foraging near a nearby stream, they heard a strange sound, a low hum that reverberated through the air. It wasn't natural, unlike the familiar forest sounds they had grown used to. Elliot's brow furrowed, and Thalia's eyes narrowed as she focused on the disturbance. "Do you hear that?" Elliot asked, scanning the treetops. Thalia nodded. "It's not of this world, or at least not from this part of the world. We need to go back to Lyria." The two hurried back to their home, their hearts racing. As they neared the clearing, they saw Lyria standing at the edge of the trees, her face tense, eyes scanning the horizon. She turned as they approached, her expression confirming their fears. "We're not alone," Lyria said, her voice cold but steady. Elliot's heart sank. "What is it? What did you sense?" "Hunters," Lyria replied. "They've come for the relics, the ancient magic of this world. They must have followed the signal from your crash. These are beings from the Outer Rim, mercenaries who seek to exploit the power that our ancestors left behind." Elliot felt a chill run down his spine. "What do they want with us?" Thalia's expression hardened. "It's not us they want. It's the power beneath this forest, but they will not hesitate to kill anyone who stands in their way." Elliot clenched his fists. He had never faced anything like this before. Aliens hunting for mystical relics was far beyond the realm of his space exploration missions. But this world was his home now. And these people, Lyria and Thalia, were his family. He would not let them be taken from him. "We can't let them reach the relics," Elliot said, his voice filled with determination. "We need a plan." Lyria nodded. "The relics are deep in the heart of the forest, protected by ancient barriers. We still have time, but not much. The hunters will come with advanced technology, and while we have the advantage of the land, they have numbers and firepower." Thalia's eyes flashed with fierce resolve. "We'll defend our home. We've fought for it before, and we will do it again." Elliot looked at the sisters, feeling the weight of the coming battle settle in his chest. He wasn't just a stranded astronaut anymore. He was part of something bigger, something worth fighting for. Together, they set to work. Lyria and Thalia used their knowledge of the forest's ancient magic to set traps, calling upon the land to aid in their defense. Elliot, using the last remaining pieces of his ship's technology, crafted makeshift weapons and communications devices. They were preparing for a battle that would test not only their skills but their bond as well. As night fell, the tension in the air grew thicker. Elliot, Lyria, and Thalia stood side by side, their hearts pounding in unison as they awaited the arrival of the hunters. "We're ready," Lyria said, her voice steady. Elliot nodded. "We fight together." The first sign of the hunters was the faint hum of their ships as they broke through the planet's atmosphere. Elliot's heart raced as he heard the sound of engines descending, slicing through the quiet of the forest. Lyria and Thalia stood ready, their senses heightened, attuned to the energy shifts in the air. "Stay close," Lyria whispered, her eyes locked on the sky. "They won't stop until they've taken what they came for." The mercenaries landed not far from their home, sleek black ships touching down in a clearing that glowed with the eerie blue light of the relics buried beneath the earth. A group of heavily armed aliens emerged. Tall, muscular beings with advanced weaponry and armor that shimmered in the dim light of the forest. Elliot, Lyria, and Thalia remained hidden in the thick underbrush, waiting for the right moment to strike. The hunters moved methodically, scanning the area with advanced sensors, unaware of the trap set by the sisters. As the lead mercenary stepped forward, a low growl rumbled through the forest. The ground beneath him shifted, and in an instant, he was swallowed by a sinkhole that had appeared out of nowhere, leaving the other mercenaries scrambling in confusion. "Now," Lyria hissed. With a swift motion, Elliot activated a device he had cobbled together from the wreckage of his ship, sending a wave of electromagnetic interference through the air. The hunters' advanced weapons sputtered and shorted out, their sensors suddenly useless in the chaotic energy field Elliot had created. Thalia moved like a shadow, darting through the trees, her movements graceful and deadly. She called upon the forest's magic to ensnare the mercenaries, roots and vines shooting up from the ground to bind their limbs. Lyria, wielding a staff that hummed with ancient power, unleashed blasts of energy, sending their enemies scattering in panic. Elliot fought alongside them, using his modified blaster to take down the remaining hunters who tried to regroup. The battle was fast and brutal, a mix of alien technology and ancient magic clashing under the darkened canopy of trees. But the hunters were relentless. For every one they took down, another seemed to appear, their numbers greater than Elliot had anticipated. Sweat dripped down his face as he fired at the approaching enemies, his heart pounding in his chest. Despite their strength and preparation, the tide of battle was beginning to turn. "They're too many," Elliot shouted, ducking behind a fallen tree to catch his breath. "We can't hold them off much longer." Lyria, her face pale but resolute, nodded grimly. "We need to lure them deeper into the forest, where the relic's magic is strongest. It will be dangerous, but it's our only chance." Thalia, blood running down her arm from a shallow wound, met Elliot's gaze. "We fight to protect our home. No matter what happens, we do this together." Elliot's chest tightened with a mix of fear and love. He nodded, knowing there was no turning back. Together, the three of them retreated, drawing the mercenaries into the heart of the forest. As they reached the ancient relic site, a powerful energy radiated from the ground, pulsing with the planet's magic. The hunters, greedy for the relic's power, followed without hesitation. But as soon as they stepped into the sacred circle, the forest came alive. The relics, sensing the threat, unleashed a surge of raw energy that overwhelmed the mercenaries, sending them reeling in agony. The air crackled with power as the hunters fell one by one, their bodies consumed by the very force they sought to control. Elliot, Lyria, and Thalia stood together in the center of the storm, their hands clasped, bound by the strength of their love and the power of the land they had sworn to protect. When the final mercenary fell, the forest grew silent once more. The danger finally passed. Exhausted but victorious, Elliot turned to Lyria and Thalia, pulling them both into a tight embrace. They had defended their home, their bond unbroken, their love stronger than ever. "We did it," Elliot whispered, his voice filled with relief. Thalia smiled, her face streaked with dirt, but glowing with pride. "Together." Lyria rested her head against Elliot's chest, her voice soft but steady. "We are bound, not just by this world, but by what we have created together." As the three of them stood in the heart of the forest, surrounded by the remnants of the battle, Elliot knew that they had found something far greater than survival. They had found a love that transcended worlds, a family built on trust, sacrifice, and shared strength. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. The days following the battle against the mercenaries were filled with a sense of quiet triumph, but also a deep exhaustion. Elliot, Lyria, and Thalia had protected their home, their bond now unbreakable. The planet seemed to respond to their victory, its once mysterious energies now gently pulsing in harmony with the life they had chosen to build together. Though the threat was gone, the relics buried deep within the forest continued to hum with a latent power, reminding them that their new world was as dangerous as it was beautiful. Elliot and the sisters knew that the hunters might have been the first, but they wouldn't be the last to seek the planet's ancient magic. "We need to fortify," Lyria said one morning, as they stood together at the edge of their clearing, surveying the land. "Now that we've defended the relics, others will come, and we must be ready." Thalia nodded. "Our people once had barriers, ways to protect the relics from outsiders. With Elliot's knowledge and what remains of his technology, we might be able to rebuild some of them." Elliot felt a surge of determination. Though his ship's technology was limited, he had salvaged enough to create defensive systems, communication tools, and energy shields that could complement the sisters' magic. It was a blending of their two worlds, each bringing their strengths to create something new. Over the next few weeks, the three of them worked tirelessly to secure their home. Elliot rigged energy-based traps around the perimeter, using the remnants of his ship's systems to create an early warning network. Lyria and Thalia harnessed the planet's magic, reinforcing the natural defenses of the forest, guiding the trees and vines to grow into a protective wall that would hide their home from intruders. During this time, their bond deepened further. Every task, every challenge they faced together was another reminder of how much they had come to mean to one another. Elliot, once an outsider on this alien planet, now felt completely at home. One evening, after a long day of building and reinforcing their defenses, they gathered around the fire, the warmth of the flames casting a soft glow on their faces. Elliot sat between Lyria and Thalia, his arms wrapped around them, feeling the steady rhythm of their breathing. "We've come so far," Elliot said quietly, looking up at the stars that twinkled through the canopy of trees. "I never thought I'd find something like this out here in the middle of nowhere." Lyria smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "You were meant to be here, Elliot. Fate brought you to us." Thalia nodded, her hand resting on Elliot's chest. "Together, we've built something stronger than any of us could have done alone. We've created a home." Elliot's heart swelled with love for both of them. Their journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also brought them closer than he ever thought possible. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving, building a future that combined the best of both their worlds. "We're a family now," Elliot whispered, his voice filled with emotion, "and nothing will ever break that." The sisters smiled, their eyes gleaming with the same love and determination. They were ready for whatever the future held, knowing that they would face it together. Months passed, and the small family continued to build their life together. The planet's dangers, while ever present, felt less daunting now that Elliot, Lyria, and Thalia had fortified their home and created a balance between the planet's magic and Elliot's technology. The forest thrived, the land responding to their efforts as if acknowledging their union. Elliot often found himself thinking about the legacy they were creating. Their union wasn't just a simple marriage. It was the blending of two worlds, two species, and two ways of life. And it wasn't just about survival. It was about building something lasting, something future generations, if there were to be any, could inherit. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of red and gold across the alien horizon, Elliot stood at the entrance to their home, gazing out at the forest. Lyria and Thalia joined him, standing on either side of him, their hands intertwined with his. "What are you thinking about?" Lyria asked, her voice soft as the last rays of sunlight filtered through the trees. Elliot smiled, glancing at her before turning his gaze back to the sky. "About the future. About what we've built here." Thalia rested her head on his shoulder, her voice filled with warmth. "It's a future I never thought was possible. Not after our people were lost." Lyria nodded, her silver eyes reflecting the fading light. "But now, we have a chance to create something new. A legacy that will last beyond us." Elliot's heart swelled with pride. We've built something incredible together, and whatever comes next, we'll be ready for it. As the night settled in, Elliot and the sisters sat together by the fire, discussing what the future might hold. They spoke of the possibility of others finding their planet, of more explorers coming from the stars. They talked about the children they might have one day, and the world they would inherit. A world protected by both magic and technology, by the bond that Elliot, Lyria, and Thalia had created. Later that night, as they lay beneath the stars, Elliot whispered, "I never thought I'd find love out here in the far reaches of space. But now I can't imagine my life without you." Lyria smiled, her fingers tracing gentle patterns on his arm. "You are a part of us now, Elliot. Forever." Thalia's voice was soft but steady. "And no matter what comes, we will face it as one." Elliot looked up at the stars, the vastness of the universe stretching out above them. He had once thought of the stars as a symbol of the unknown, of the mysteries and dangers that awaited explorers like him. But now, as he lay between the two women he loved, the stars represented something else entirely. Hope, unity, and the future they were building together. Elliot, Lyria, and Thalia had found each other across the vast distances of space and time, and together they had created something beautiful, a love that transcended worlds. And as the stars continued to shine above them, Elliot knew that their legacy was just beginning. Their love, their bond, and their home would stand as a testament to the power of unity, a beacon of hope in a universe filled with uncertainty. They had found each other in the stars, and together they would light the way forward.